Hello, Star Wars fans. Mando Mitchy back today, and we're going to be looking at an AT-TE Clone Wars vehicle that really has some issues. I picked this up from an individual. It was a marketplace find a while back. It wouldn't stand. Electronics were advertised as untested or wasn't sure, which always means they don't work. Missing some of those cannon pieces, those firing missile cannon pieces on the front and the back. So missing some parts, but overall, like somewhat complete. It looks like most of the main stuff is there, but yeah, the legs were just popping off and that. And so as I got it, I put it on the project list. I had it for a little while and wanted to begin to take a look at it. Just finished up a couple other big projects. And my goal was I wanted to collect some of the Clone Wars vehicles. I liked them. You know, I just ordered the HasLab gunship. I have another gunship, but I like that. I have the turbo tank. I have an ARC 170. I wanted an AT-TE. I mean, there was a few other things. I don't want just all those vehicles. There was a lot of them, but I don't have the space for that. But this one I did want. So I'm terrible at taking pictures and videoing to start with, but I had already taken out the batteries. The batteries had been left in this thing. They were swollen, stuck to the contacts, and I apologize for not getting good pictures of that so you could see just how bad it was, but they were terrible. And the corrosion was terrible. I went ahead and picked some of that out, but you can begin to see a little bit of what we're working with here. Just unfortunate. This is what happens in anything electronic where the batteries are left in for some time. They just decompose, start to leak, corrode, and just destroy electronics. So I think what I want to do is to start with is see how deep and how terrible this runs. So I want to get some batteries in. Let's see if the electronics work. If it does work, maybe I can clean up the contacts from this vantage point and not take the entire thing apart and take the circuit board and those pieces out. And if not, then we'll do a complete disassembly. So let's start there. Let's get some known good batteries and see if the electronics works and what's functions. All right, known good batteries. Haven't really cleaned up anything on the terminals any better than what we just saw. So let's take a look and see how this thing fares from an electronic standpoint. So if you're unfamiliar, I believe that this is the on-off switch underneath the cannon chair. So I think that's on from what I can see. So let's see. Let's start, I guess, with this. That's encouraging. Oh, wow. So we have LED lights. The display screen lights up. Very good. So let's continue on. Okay, so that button works. That's that walking sound, kind of the same. This is really that same era as the Legacy AT-AT, and that sounds almost identical to that sound. So let's go middle button.
All forward positions are advancing.
All right.
Approaching droid perimeter. We are undetected. All units, fire at will. All units attack. The droid army is in full retreat. All forward positions are advancing.
That's amazing. I really think this was the golden era of vehicles. I wish we could get something like this today. This Legacy line, and the Clone Wars vehicles too, were so cool, and that was cool. So yep. So then this is really good so far. Okay. So we can fire there, and then I'm not super familiar with this vehicle, but from what I understand, then this button should engage another sound, from what I understand from reviews. This is the first one of these I've ever owned, and should disengage these three panels and open that up. And it might not open up exactly right just because the legs aren't on it, and the legs, it does not stand, so it's got some issues.
Move out. Let's go.
That is encouraging. It did not release maybe the way I would have hoped. Let's see here. Okay.
Move out. Let's go.
Okay, so all electronics work out. That is a good sign that we're not going to have to completely disassemble this, that we can begin cleaning some of those contacts up. And I'll show you a few methods that I use. I've worked with electronics for over 30 years, and corrosion is a terrible thing. Moisture and battery acid or anything like that is just wreaks so much havoc on electronics. So let's get in there. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can improve that. Maybe we do have to take it all the way apart, but I think it's worth trying to fix it initially. What I'm guessing is, or what I'm hoping anyway, is that this thing was setting on bottom down, and because you can see there is some corrosion on this cover. So I'm hoping it was setting bottom down, and as that acid leaked, it kind of went down, just hit those initial areas, didn't seep up. If it's laying on its top, it would have got up into the other electronic components on the circuit board and that. So let's hope that it didn't, and let's see what we can do, and we'll make the best decision on what the repair is going to be. All right, so now that we know the electronics work, I think my first step is going to be, I'm going to go in with a couple of tools, like some pick style tools, and try to clean out as much of that corrosion as I can. I'm going to go in and scrape off the majority of what's left on this corrosion. And then what I'm going to do is try a method. I'm going to put just some basic household vinegar on. I'm not going to put it on heavy. I'm going to use actually a cotton swab to go in and put it on the corroded area. Vinegar will dissolve corrosion. It is very acidic. You can use it on battery terminals and different things like that. It doesn't work real fast, but the problem is if we coated it and it got up into more of the electronics, or if it was something that was more saturated, but what we would see is that the acidic vinegar could continue to corrode and destroy those electrical contacts. So what my plan is if I can get it cleaned up to where it's looking really pretty good, corrosion free, then I'll probably go in and clean that with some swabs with some alcohol, and then maybe even some baking soda, because baking soda is something that would neutralize any sort of acidic properties in that, so we wouldn't have to worry about that. And then finally, I'm a big fan of dielectric grease, so we could go in and coat that with that too, and that helps prevent corrosion. Just is really going to clean things up and make it look nice at the end as well. So we're going to try those steps. Once I apply the vinegar, we'll probably wait. You know, if this is going to be hours to days, you know, letting that do its thing. So yeah, we'll start that, and then we'll circle back around once we see how that works out. So you can see in this lower one on the ground terminal was the worst. So it was packed full of corrosion. It really turned out very, very good for as bad as it was. So yeah, all these. So what I did is I went in with a pick and just kind of cleaned up that as much as I could, compressed air, blew it out, and then went in with the vinegar and kind of washed and kind of went through and just made sure I did it on a swab so that we didn't get saturated electronics up inside of the toy. And so as I went through that, I went in with a pick and the needle and just kind of worked in through and cleaned everything up, scraped it, cleaned some more with the vinegar, and just really didn't use a lot of liquid at all. And so really got it to where I was pretty happy with this thing. So at that point, I knew with the vinegar being acidic, the residue left on the electronics would continue to possibly cause some corrosion. So I went in with some isopropyl alcohol on the swabs and wiped everything down that I had put the vinegar on, and then blew that all out and cleaned it up, and I think we're looking pretty darn good at this point. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and apply some dielectric grease. I use this a lot in my career in working with electronics and what I did. And you can see some of the things on this tube prevents corrosion on trailer plugs and light bulb sockets, keeps battery terminals corrosion free. So this is a sealer slash corrosion inhibitor. So dielectric grease you'll see on a lot of automotive applications and vehicles and that. So this is something that's really, really good. It's a heat sink. It serves a lot of different properties. We don't need that at all in this. But so really, really good stuff. So what I'm going to do is go in with a swab and apply the electrical grease on all those electrical connectors, just a thin coating, and then put the batteries in and reattach that. And then we'll go on to the next step here. All right, so working on the legs to the ATTE, and one of the known issues with these guys are that the legs typically want to pop out, they won't stand up, the legs will pop off. They're just really susceptible to some issues. So as I was doing some research, I found a pretty good option, and I've tried it in part already. I wanted to show this. So what they had talked about is how, so you've got, this is one of the shorter legs, not the shortest leg, but you'll see it's got a eared plastic piece that pops in this kind of geared piece. That way it clicks and stops in the position that you need it to be in. And so these ears clip into that, and then these bottom pieces actually clip into the spline piece inside there to hold it in position. So what the gentleman in the video had talked about was taking some rubber tubing, putting it inside this piece to put outward pressure so that the tabs would hold it in place and hold the teeth, the splines in place so that it stays where you want it to be. So I've done these legs already that I've put together. You can see that I've been working on the weathering. Just with this being a restoration and a non-boxed, incomplete, that I'm going to have some 3D printed parts on, I thought, man, what a great one to go ahead and weather and really make it look Star Wars accurate and have it in my display. So yes, you can see there's a weathered leg versus just a regular OEM Hasbro leg. So such a huge difference. I'm going to do it to the whole vehicle, and I'm not done yet. This is just the initial. This is like 3 different types of grime and weathering that I've put in it so far in the process, and it's not finished yet. But, and we'll talk more about that later, but as we do this, I'm going to pop this in and show you what that looks like. And so, but yeah, I took some rubber tubing, vacuum line, you could use clear rubber tubing, but something close to that inside diameter of that area. They all appear to be the same so far. Let me pop that in and we'll show you what that looks like. All right, you can see I've got that down low enough that it's going to be putting that inward pressure on those tabs. So I've got that done, and basically what we're going to do is we'll pop these, this leg pops into this foot piece. So there's that, and man, that's definitely different than this thing. Just pops out so easy and won't stay in place. So we're gonna try this. Man, this even turns much harder. So there's more pressure on those splines. So yeah, so the goal is for this thing to stand. So yeah, so if you do have an ATTE, you're struggling to get it to stand, do some experimenting, get some clear rubber tubing, some vacuum line, size it up, pop it in there, and give it a whirl. So all right, we're going to keep assembling, keep weathering, and we'll check back in shortly. So here we have reached this step where legs are all attached and this thing really stands well now. So I would definitely recommend the method of some vacuum type tube, clear tube, whatever it would be to fit in those cavities. But yeah, it's been standing for days now. I can't really pop the feet or the legs off. And as long as it's not broken or it didn't get to that point, that I think that you should be able to succeed in getting this thing to stand. So a couple of things that I have been doing as I'm working through this process, wanting to get closer to completion to where it's going to be displayable in my collection. You can see that I did do the weathering and the work on the legs before I put them on. And I did the engines and some of the mechanics in those cavities too, because it was just going to be easier before I did that assembly. So yeah, I like to go through with the different washes and the panel lines and that, and just bring out that definition to where it's not looking as much like a plastic toy and more something like a scale model or something that is just super cool. So I don't typically do that. Like here's one of my vintage Kenner ATSTs. I won't do that to that. I just preserve those in more of a vintage Kenner aesthetic. I like that better that way. But any of these things that are, especially if they're unboxed and I'm doing kind of a restoration, I will go and do the customization on it because I just like it better in my collection. So a couple of things that I do use, as you'll see, the Vallejo engine grime, the 73815 is one that's more of a one of these is more of a, yeah, so that's more of a gray, just kind of dirty grime, and I'll use that in some of these kind of panel lines and that, and sometimes I do mix a little bit of more black with it, make it a little darker. And then the other one we have here is the streaking grime, and this is more of a green, kind of just, you know, something that you would have in things being weathered and out, just kind of mildewing and looking terrible and that. And I usually do darken this up unless I'm putting it on like a wall or something where I really want that kind of mildewed look. I do want a little darker texture. So I did that on a lot of these areas already. And then what I do at the end is, I don't know if it comes through, but you can kind of see where there's just kind of that metal exposed edge and just that weathering you would have from equipment out in, you know, in a field and kind of working through. And what I really love for that is like the pewter rub and buff. And then I also use, I've got a black oil wash that I'll go in and just very slightly kind of grime up and go dirty. And then I do have a rub and buff on that as well. So that a version of that, kind of that black for that. So yeah, I just kind of, I start small on an area that you can't see. So, and then kind of perfect what aesthetic or technique that I'm looking for. And it's kind of something that's individual to each person. You kind of go and feel it out. And yeah, I just had someone ask me that on how I arrived at my final product on my cell barge that I 3D printed. And I said, I just kind of researched it, kind of bought a bunch of different rust, weathering effects, paints and that. I started painting and kept painting and weathering until I felt like it was done. I guess it's kind of hard to describe that, but that's kind of part of that creative process. So, and I do that on a lot of this too. So as I've learned, as I've done multiple vehicles and kind of went through this, that's kind of changed a little bit, you know, and you find a new product and you experiment and that. And so yeah, so that's kind of how I do this. So I'm going to go through and do the panel lines. I'm going to distress and weather the rest of this. I think I'm going to do the top gun next, but I did want to mention one other thing. So this was missing the missiles. So on the ATTE, they have 6 firing missile pieces right here. And in this legacy kind of Clone Wars line in that era, the AT-AT, the Millennium Falcon, Turbo Tank, all those vehicles that kind of came out in that, they would be, and I think just for safety reasons, they're a, well, let me pop one of these out. I'll show you kind of the same as this on the other end. So they're going to be this rounded end look. And it looks like a firing toy missile. So what I did was 3D printed these pieces, and I've started doing some customizations because I really want this to look more like a screen accurate cannon. And I'm not done with the weathering part, but I like the look of that a lot more than just the stock, just regular toy firing missile out of that. So, you know, it still does fire, but this looks like something that would be firing laser blasts out. And again, we're talking about realism in a fictional movie series or animated series. So I get it, but it's like, for me, in my mind, I like that aesthetic better. So yeah, you can see there's 4, and these, if you don't have an ATTE, I'd say, man, this is a must-have for a collection if you like Clone Wars vehicles. And I'm an original trilogy guy, really, first, but I do love the prequels, and I do love the animated Clone Wars. So, and these vehicles this was the golden age of vehicles. But yeah, this is these things move together. You can do height and that as well. So there's 4 on the front up by where the pilot would be, and then on the back we have two cannons back here as well. So yeah, I really like the look of this and how it's coming along. So I'm going to keep weathering, keep working. I've got some other ideas, some things I want to do on the front windshield and that, and we'll keep updating as we get closer to this being the finished displayable vehicle that I'm hoping for. All right, here is our somewhat finished project. So panning around here, you can see got through all the weathering and the detail on the legs, went over the panel lines and those custom firing guns or missiles, whatever you would look at. It's a little cool work. My thought, if it had a wiper arm, what that would look like, and yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I got a Phase 1 clone in there. I do know that I've never went down the rabbit hole of the clone troopers yet. I went down a lot of rabbit holes in my collecting, and don't have a lot of either Phase 1 or Phase 2 clones, but I got a couple. So that is something with this Battle of Geonosis theme in 2026 that I need to revisit. But so yeah, went in and did some custom, some weathering, and that all over, and you can see on the interior side of that, got a clone commander inside there. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, the thing stands great. So the repair process on the adding those tubular pieces into the legs really made a difference, because yeah, I couldn't keep the legs on, let alone this thing standing when I got it. So so yeah, so we've got that, and move this a little bit as I did. All right, take 2. So yeah, I feel fortunate that we did get the electronics to work, and everything's functioning there with all the corrosion and that we had.
Move out. Let's go.
So we have a couple clone commanders in there. I do need to buy about probably 50 plus Phase 1, and then maybe some Phase 2, depending on the dioramas and the scenes. I've got some ideas, which is a scary thing for me. So yeah, so I guess in summary, this was a cool restoration project. Yeah, this thing, you know, you saw in the beginning I got it. It was it'd been played with, it'd been a child's toy. You could tell it was seen better days. So yeah, from the 3D printing, the few pieces that it was missing, to correcting the issues with the legs and the feet on that, and then just basic cleanup, and then the weathering. Really, we were able to bring this from a pile of parts into something pretty cool. So yeah, it's heading into my display. It's going to sit alongside my turbo tank and my Arc 170, and then be in the display once I get the new Republic gunship HasLab that's coming out, you know, sometime next summer or next fall. So again, guys, thanks for following my content. I've been just amazed at the support and the views and the subscribers. And again, if this is something that is cool to you, and that's something that you like seeing, toys and boxes of parts resurrected and made to something that's displayable and cool, definitely like and subscribe. Check out other things that are on my channel, from my Hoth display and dioramas, to Jabba's palace, to Jabba's sail barge, to my Death Stars, to carbon freeze chamber, to all that kind of different stuff that I've worked on. Definitely check that out. So thank you again. Like and subscribe. This is Mando Mitchy. God bless you all. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.